What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. here with Mr.
Drew Solon. How are you today?
We're doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm good, and I am, enjoying. I think I said this a lot on the last show. I'm enjoying productivity at the same time as balancing time with family because at the time of this recording, we just finished March break and had some really nice times together. So I'm good. I'm enjoying being productive and the beauty of family.
Yeah. It's a good time. Always trying to get that clarity and get that time with the family is always important. But I'm excited about all conversations, but I'm really excited about this conversation because this is something that not many people know about because, especially a part of Dad Central, we're always looking for up-to-date research, And in my web crawling about a little while back, I saw, hey, we got to talk about this. And we actually did an episode about a recent research done by PEW Research Centre. We did an episode on that. And we're going one better. We're actually bringing to the digital stage today Rachel Minkin. She is a research associate at the PEW Research Center. I'm treating like them in the United States saying the Ohio State University. This is the PEW Research Center. So Drew, I'm looking forward to this one. This is going to be really good because we're giving really up-to-date research information on parenting.
Yeah, and I would really want to call you out because when we first did our short mashup on what we were seeing in the research, you said, I'm speaking out, we're going to get somebody from the PEW Research Center to be on the show. And guess what? You went out and made it happen. So thank you, Ed, for making this happen. So I'm really looking forward to it. But before we do that, let's just remind everybody that the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. And I know that when you have research like we're going to have today, you can learn things and you can take things away and apply them to be the best of yourself and be the best for your family. So yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is exciting and looking forward to it because even we had a meeting with some of the members of the team. And when I mentioned this, people went, what? They went, really? So let's bring up the star of the show. Hey, Rachel, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Outstanding. We are really excited to have you share with the Dad Central family today. Really looking forward to it.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Before we get really into it, can you give us a little background about the PEW Research Center? I have to say it that way because you provide so much great information.
Oh, great. Well, the PEW Research Center is a nonpartisan, nonprofit fact tank that informs the public about issues, attitudes, and trends shaping the world. We study a wide range of topics in the U.S. and globally through public opinion polling, demographic research, and other data-driven social science research.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to let Drew start off on this one.
Okay. Well, the research or the data that you have it's extensive and it's really great to see it. And why don't we just start off? I think it was page 1. If we just look at the title, it was I should have had it ready and I don't, but it was mental health tops the concerns, right? So anyways, what I think I should be asking though is if you can give us a little bit of background on the research. So who was surveyed and when was the survey done? Just so people can have a context.
Absolutely. So this is our study of parenting in America today, and we conducted an online survey of 3,757 parents in the U.S. with at least one child under age 18. And the survey respondents are members of PEW's American Trends panel, which is a nationally representative online survey panel. And we also included an oversample of Black, Hispanic, and Asian parents from a similar survey web panel. And the data was collected in September to October 2022.
Okay. So, that sounds like a lot of responses in a short period of time. And But so I'm just more curious, how have you been so successful in getting that much data so quickly?
Great. So we run the surveys on these online survey panels. And so our panelists are members of the panels. They receive surveys regularly. And especially if they're a member of our sample population, these are parents of children with children that are under 18. So really they're getting these surveys specific to them and gathering their views on parenting, among many other research topics that we survey on.
Okay, that's great. Ed?
Yeah, I want to jump in. Right on the highlight, mental health. Number one concern. Was that right across, like basically the number one right across the board between mothers, dads, etc.?
Right. So mental health tops the list of parents' concerns, and we do see some differences by gender. So moms are more likely than dads to say they're extremely or very worried that their children may struggle with anxiety or depression at some point. But it's a top concern for both.
Compared, let me ask, how often do you do this parenting survey?
We have, so this was a survey specifically of parents reflecting on parenting and their approaches, their feelings about it. So this was a particular kind of study. We did a similar study of parents in 2015, but to have a survey really focused on their approach, their feelings, thinking about their worries, concerns, and aspirations for their children, we're really taking a specific survey on that. Often we'll think about our surveys in terms of, are there differences among parents and non-parents? Are there other differences that we need to look at here? So it'll come up, but this was a survey specifically of parents thinking about parenting.
Just being curious here, seems like that's a word of the day, Drew, curious. When you did the 2015 survey, did mental health come up at all? If it did, is it stronger in this survey compared to the last survey?
Sure. So our 2015 survey was done in a slightly different way. The question about parents' worries for their children was asked in a slightly different way, but we see the same general patterns. The top of the list for parents in 2015 was concerns about their children facing bullying and struggling with anxiety and depression. And here in our 2022 survey, top of the list again is concerns about their children struggling with anxiety and depression and bullying.
Okay. Drew, you want to continue?
Yeah, well, why don't we ask just generally, like, what are some of the highlights from the survey between dads and moms? Just high level, and then we can maybe get into some of the more specific when it comes to gender and parenting, like the differences between moms and dads, but just high level overview, differences between moms and dads.
Well, thinking first about, parents reflecting on their parenting and the feelings about parenting, though majorities of both moms and dads say being a parent is one of the most aspects of who they are, moms are more likely than dads to say it's the most important. Similarly, majorities of moms and dads say parenting is a lot or somewhat harder than they thought it would be, but moms are more likely to say this, with 30% of moms compared with 20% of dads saying it's a lot harder. Mothers are more likely than fathers to say they're trying to raise their children in a very or somewhat different way compared to how they were raised. And the reverse is true, that fathers are more likely than mothers to say they're raising their kids somewhat or very similarly to how they were raised. And again, we're seeing majorities of mom and dads finding parenting enjoyable and rewarding, but moms are more likely than dads to say it's tiring and stressful most or all of the time.
I'm going to be the 2015 guy today. So again, how do these results differ in any way? Because I know the question was asked a little bit different, and this just seemed to be more focused research. But were these trends also pretty much the same than what you saw in that 2015 survey?
Yeah, not directly comparing, but seeing kind of similar patterns, and that parents say they find being a parent rewarding and enjoyable, more so than saying it is tiring and stressful, but there were some differences by gender.
Okay. Drew?
Yeah, well, when I look at, we talked about mental health, and you talked about most parenting being harder than they expected, but they give themselves high marks for the job they're doing. I'm just wondering if you could talk more about that data around parents and parenting being harder than they expected. But it's interesting that they also give themselves high marks for the job. So there's almost like a dichotomy in that data around that question.
Yeah, we're asking parents to think about parenting overall, whether compared with how they thought it would be, if it would be easier or harder. And majorities of mothers and fathers say it's a lot or somewhat harder than they thought it would be. But we do see that difference in terms of moms being more likely to say it's a lot harder than they expected it to be. And also thinking about the job that they're doing as a parent. I'm sorry, I've lost my place. Do you want to be accurate here?
That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I just wanted to be sure that I could look at these differences here, that mothers and fathers were giving themselves similarly high ratings for the job that they're doing. And so the difference there is in their reflections on it being harder, but they also reflect on the child care tasks that they're taking on slightly differently, and with mothers saying that they're the ones doing more when it comes to certain tasks, and fathers might be more likely to say they handle these things about equally, or the father does more in opposite sex relationships.
Okay. Well, maybe we could focus on, there's a whole section in the report about gender and parenting. And it opens by saying, mothers and fathers in the United States approach parenting differently in many ways, from how they relate to their children, to the worries they have about challenges their children may face, to the role being a parent plays in their lives. And so can you give us some of the highlights from the survey, and the differences between moms and dads when it comes to specifically gender and parenting?
Sure. Well, in terms of parenting style, we asked a series of questions about how parents tend to approach parenting in different ways. And moms are far more likely than dads to say they tend to be overprotective and give in to their children too quickly. And for fathers, they're more likely than mothers to say the reverse. They give too much freedom to their children and stick to their guns too much. And we also asked how parents feel judged by different people in their lives, and moms tend to feel judged by others more often than dads. And this might include their parents, their spouse's parents, other parents in the community. But interestingly, dads are more likely than moms to say they feel judged by their spouse or partner among those who are married or living with a partner, at least sometimes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So when we've been doing some work educating and coaching organizations on how to support dads a little bit more, we were actually citing some stats from research that was done back in 2015. And it talked about the idea of being the perfect parent, like the pressure to be the perfect parent. And the survey said that 9 in 10 dads felt it was important to be the perfect dad. And I thought this was fascinating, versus only 8 in 10 moms. So what you're saying there is actually a little bit different than that. It's actually the reverse, because I was saying, so dads are feeling intense pressure to be the perfect dads. Again, this was millennial dads that were, and moms that were being surveyed back in 2015. So it sounds like there are some actually differences back there, whereas now the moms are feeling more of that pressure. In terms of it's harder, feeling harder for them to parent.
Right. So on most measures that we asked about whether they feel judged for how they parent their children, mothers were more likely than fathers to say they feel this sometimes. But again, with fathers, it's that difference in feeling it coming from their spouse, at least sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that. That makes sense, right? And we also know from the work that we do that spouses, when they're critical, or when fathers tend to be less positively involved. It really matters to dads of how supportive their partner is to their ability to really engage in it. And the reason being is, dads really actually lack confidence. They lack also the feeling that they've got the skills necessary to connect and engage with their children. And so, I mean, that research seems to make sense based on some of the things that we know, of just the reality of the co-parenting relationship, and that feeling judged from your partner is real, and it also impacts their dad's ability. But I would imagine then the external perception really impacts moms, right? And how they're feeling. And so I think as a parent who hears this validated by research, I think of two things. So as a dad, I just need to let my partner know how important it is to me that they feel like I'm doing a good job. But I also need to be empathetic and understanding that my partner is experiencing a lot of external pressure, and feeling the weight of being judged by all these other people. And rather than dismiss those things, I need to acknowledge them, and I need to empathize and work more closely with my partner to support each other, because I think that helps relieve some of that pressure, maybe. Ed,
Yeah, I want to move on to the area of race and ethnicity, and interesting findings there in your report. And if you could just give a high level in regards to some of those findings, because I think it may catch some people by surprise about the race and ethnicity findings. So if you could share that with us, that'd be great.
Sure. In terms of reflections on parenting and their approach, again, we see large majorities across racial and ethnic groups saying being a parent is the most or one of the most important aspects of who they are as people, and far larger shares of Black and Hispanic parents than white and Asian parents say it is the most important aspect. Black parents are the most likely to rate themselves highly on the job they're doing as a parent, with about 7 in 10 saying they're doing at least a very good job, and they are more likely than white, Hispanic, and Asian parents to say they're doing an excellent job. And when we asked about parenting styles across racial and ethnic groups, parents are more likely to say they're overprotective than give their children too much freedom. But Black parents are especially likely to say they tend to be overprotective, more so than white, Hispanic, and Asian parents. And worries and aspirations for their children also varied by racial and ethnic group.
It's interesting because some, and I underline the word some, areas of the media, I'll just use my lens here, do not portray that when it comes to Black parents. And it's really interesting, because I know there was research done a number of years ago saying that the most engaged fathers with their kids are Black fathers. Whereas you look a lot of times through a media lens, it shows something different in a lot of different media sources. So I really found that quite interesting about, them saying, that group saying it's very, very, very important to their identity of being a parent. But on average, economically, they're probably at the lower end of the totem pole.
Yeah, Ed, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I was also looking, I know we're flipping around a little bit here, but when you looked at income and parenting in this survey, there was something that really jumped out to me. And it was that lower income parents are more likely than those with higher incomes to say parenting is rewarding and enjoyable all of the time. And so that was surprising to me, right? It says across income. Anyways, well, Maybe Rachel, I'll let you. You're the expert. You're the one who did all this. Can you talk to us about that aspect, where lower income parents are more likely than those with higher incomes to say parenting is rewarding and enjoyable all the time?
Right. So pull that number up.
Which I know it's making it hard for you, Rachel. So I appreciate you bearing with us.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted.
This is why we have
Sure. I could speak to the actual numbers here, so I wanted to be sure to pull that up. But right, so across income groups, the majority is about 8 and 10 or more say they find being a parent to be rewarding or enjoyable all or most of the time. But yes, we
Say
see those
8 and
lower
10?
About 8 and 10 or more. We're saying
Wow,
that
or more. Wow.
it's enjoyable and rewarding at least most of the time.
Okay.
But we do see for lower income parents, they're the most likely to say that's always the case.
Wow.
Some 43% of lower income parents say being a parenting is rewarding all of the time. Wow. And 38% of lower income parents say being a parent is always enjoyable. And that was more so than those with middle and upper incomes. But also, lower income parents and those with middle incomes are more likely than those with upper incomes to say parenting is stressful all or most of the time. To get the flip side.
Yeah. More stressful, but more rewarding. Excellent. Good stuff. Good stuff. I know we're flipping again, but I also want to talk about your survey you did. Do parents today raise their kids differently from their own upbringing? And during almost all our conversations with dads, we always ask them, how is your parenting different from the way you were parented? And I know you have some interesting results there you could share with our audience if you could.
Sure. So in the survey, we asked the question, compared with how you were raised, are you trying to raise your children in a similar way or a different way? And depending on whether they said they're trying to raise their children in a very or somewhat similar way, or they're trying to raise their children in a very or somewhat different way, they got the follow-up question that was an open-ended question asking them in what ways are they trying to raise their children similarly or differently. So then they were able to add their own words there and their own perspective. We coded those responses and see 5 themes across the responses. And they parallel those answering similarly and those answering that they're trying to raise their children differently. They're really speaking to these 5 similar themes. And what we found is that the themes for both are a sense of the values they want to impart and how religion plays a role or not with how they're raising their children, expectations for their children's behavior and their approach to discipline, how they express affection, love, and emotions in their relationship with their children, their approach to education, be that pushing them to achieve or having less pressure around school, and giving their children freedom and autonomy to be kids and make their own decisions.
Yeah, when I look at that, and you have got those 5 different categories, they're all actually, the numbers look pretty similar, right? So, but the differences are in that values and religion bucket, and the love and relationship bucket. In terms of those who are parenting similarly, like there's a high proportion who, like, that values and religion bucket is super important for them. And then the big bucket of those who are parenting differently happens in the love and relationship aspect. And those were the 2 big differences that jumped out to me. Anyways, I mean, I have some thoughts, but Ed, like, did you notice that as well?
Yeah, I noticed that, and I found it quite interesting. Again, what you hear out in the media is religion is not that important, but you look at these results, it still has importance in a lot of parenting families. So I thought that was quite an interesting aspect coming out in the research that Pew has done.
Yeah, and I also think that when we talk with a lot of the, let's say, the guests we've had on the show, and we ask that question about comparing, we usually get these 2 kind of two responses. One is I had a dad. This is what was great about him, and I try and do the same thing. And then we get, this was kind of my experience. It wasn't so great, and I really wanted to do it. I'm actually doing it a lot differently than my dad, and so to me, that data just really validates. And my hypothesis here is that, if you had a strong, like, good relationship growing up, and you felt loved and safe and protected and cared for, you want to repeat that for your children, right? Whereas if you didn't have that, let's say you had a distant family, or it was abusive at the, or there were some really negative things, you want to focus on the exact opposite. You want to create an experience that's very different for your children than you had growing up. And to me, this data just really validates. It's like you can pinpoint, here's the person who had a less than enjoyable, sometimes maybe even traumatic childhood experience, and they want to make it different. And here's the ones who had a good childhood experience, and they want to kind of repeat that. Those are just kind of my thoughts, and the data would seem to match that.
Absolutely. Well, and Rachel, I gotta say thank you for your team for doing this, really and truly, because we don't see, as I say, a lot of recent data on this, and it provides people like Drew and myself and others who are doing this some more clarity and more tools to help fathers and their families. Really appreciate it.
That's great to hear. Yeah, it's exciting to see these survey results and an opportunity for respondents to reflect on parenting and to think about what parenting looks like today.
Excellent. Drew?
Yeah, well, as we've been doing, we're going to bounce maybe back again, because I was curious about some of the questions when it came to the differences in parenting. And that's what I was struck by. It was, when I looked at the questions, so let's use mom and dads differ in their approach to parenting. And so it says mothers are more likely than fathers to say they are overprotective and given too quickly. The question was actually phrased, I think, which of the following best describes your parenting style, even if neither is exactly right? And it really just gave, two polar opposites, and then a neither. At least that's what I'm seeing here. You can correct me, because you were obviously involved in it. But I was curious to know, what's the thought process behind asking the questions in that way, that has kind of, you got to make a choice, one side or the other.
Right. So we did ask that if they're a parent who tends to, for example, give too much freedom, be overprotective, or neither. And this is a way to present options to respondents to really think, to be able to choose an option. And what's interesting with these questions is that a lot of people responded with neither, that they don't tend to do one or the other. And so, it's kind of no consensus here on which way most parents are going. The one we see the most differences on is that give too much freedom or be overprotective, with 45% of parents saying they tend to be overprotective. 20% said they give too much freedom, but 34% said neither of those fits them. So it's still a significant number. And with our set of 4 questions here, we really see about a third or more parents saying really neither option fits them.
Okay.
I want to just jump on that. It's maybe a little bit deeper. Maybe you've answered that in what you just said, but how do you come up with these questions? What is the process of coming up with these questions? Do you do a sample of a smaller size first, and then if it sounds good, okay, let's use it for our big sample? Or is it, I'd be just curious if you're open to just share the process of where do you get these questions to ask your respondents?
Sure. We reflect on previous research we've done. So we asked a similar question in 2015. We also have opportunities to test our questions and make sure they're understood, and we would be able to understand the results based on what we get. So we have a few different processes, and we do look to best practices in survey research to develop our questions.
So
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, I just want to say, as I look at some of the data, and especially that last question I asked you about parents being overprotective, parents have some of the worries that they're having, and then mental health concerns. It all seems to point to there is stress and angst that parents are experiencing. At least that's what the data shows. But it also shows that there are I think, some really really positives that hopefully dads can come away with a better understanding of their partners and what their partners are experiencing, and what that means in terms of how they can relate well with their partners, as well as in how they can relate and take this information and apply it to support their children as they grow and develop, or to begin to learn and gather more information to see, hey, is this what this data is sharing other people are experiencing, is that kind of true for us and our family? And if it is, okay, great. And if it isn't, well, okay, what are the differences, and how can we continue to hopefully again create positive differences there? So anyways, it's great to have the information to be able to then say, well, how can we take this now and apply important things for our family? So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how can people take advantage of the great research that the Pew Research Center puts out. Where can they find more information?
Great. This report and all of our reports are available on our website, which is www.pewresearch.org.
Great stuff. Well, thank you, Rachel, and your team for doing this. When I reached out to a member of your team, said, we're so happy that a fatherhood group is reaching out to us about this. So we're very happy to probably be one of the first fatherhood organizations to have a member of the team, yourself, talk about this research. And we're looking forward for more information down the road. And if there's anything that the Dad Central team can do to help in regards to fathers and their families in conjunction with Pew Research, we're very happy to, and we're there for you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Great. All right, Drew, research time.
Yeah, as I said at the end there with Rachel, it's about how do we take this information and then make good decisions in our current scenario and context. Now, so I think the information that we have, we're in an age where information is at the tip of your fingertips, more accessible than ever. But what matters most is application.
Yep.
And so I would say, can you take this information and then test it for yourself in your own context? And then what can you apply to move in a direction that you want to go? So yeah, it's data is fantastic,
Absolutely.
but you gotta learn what matters and how do you apply it. So
yeah, taking the data, making a decision, and taking action. And again, I'm so excited we're able to get Rachel on, because as I said, when I saw this research, I said, okay, we got to find a way. We got to find a way of getting someone on from Pew Research, and they're a very reputable organization. And I have a feeling that even though they did this research in America, it may be pretty universal in a lot of countries, and well, it would be interesting. Maybe I said maybe pretty applicable in other countries, maybe some Western countries, maybe, but we'll leave it at that. Maybe we'll reach out to someone else in another country one day. But let's close it up today and just say the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. We would love to hear from all of you. So the best way to touch base with us is via our email address, podcast@dadcentral.ca. Also, if you want to watch or listen to replays, we'd love you to. We'd love you to provide feedback. We'd like you to give comments and share it out with everyone, as many people as you can. And then finally, we have a lot of free resources on the dadcentral.ca website. So go to dadcentral.ca to get lots of free resources. As always, we'd like to say, remember to give yourself grace. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and we'll see you on the fatherhood journey. Take care.